Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here live at 5 for a Thursday, May the 13th. And if you hear some noises in the background, it's because my daughter recently got a puppy and he's having a heyday with the bone, and I guess you could say I am babysitting. And that actually brings me right to the first part of it live at 5. But if you're new listening to live at 5 for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, all is welcome. About healthy discussions. This is about all things healthy in a sense. And the first part is something new or something completely different. And in most cases, it can be like a show and tell. But today, the other part of it is, well, what's top of mind? What's kind of come up? What is in the news, perhaps? Some updates. I got really good information today. Now, I say that. You're going to have your own opinion on that as well, but I really want to go. It's almost like real, it's real. And then the third part, which is a fun part, that's where we'll bring out some puns or some jokes, and I have a handful of them ready, so at the end we'll wrap that up. So we feel like we haven't taken all your energy in taking things too seriously in what seems to be and can be really as a serious matter in all the ways it can be. It can be. So let's get started on the something completely different. And what I just want to propose, because this is something, and I mentioned the puppy here, you can probably hear the puppy chewing, is puppies sleep a lot. Babies sleep a lot because there's a lot of serious growing, and that's what they need their energy for. They need their energy for that time where they, in essence, double, triple, quadruple their weight in a very, not quadruple, but let's just say if a baby is 7 pounds, it will triple its weight or in a very short period of time and double. Like, it just happens. And puppies are very much the same way. In a relatively short period of time, 6 months, they could go from being a couple of pounds or a pound even to 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds. They actually will grow that fast, and that takes a lot of energy. So my key point is we only have so much energy, and with all the sleeping and with all the stress, then we actually will require more rest than ever at this point. And maybe you feel it, and maybe some feel it more than others. But the rest, the time out, whether you do it in meditation, whether you do it in just, a nice gentle walk, or just go to bed early, sleep longer, this is a good time to take note of where your energy is. If you eat too much food, you're going to use up a lot of energy, and the scenario would be that you're feeling tired or sleepy at the end of a meal or a large meal. Some don't even have to eat that much and feel tired and sleepy, and that's another issue too. But the idea is take note of your energy, because your energy levels will match what's kind of going on for you. A lot of crazy stuff, a lot of stress, been a tiring day, full on day. You will feel tired and just feel like you just need to go to bed, and honor that. Now, how can you change that? Well, what's the solutions for that? It's going to be different for different people. The idea is if you had a full out day, full on energy, especially using your brain and your mind and your thinking, your faculties and all of that, then the brain uses most of the energy anyway, and most of the nutrients from air, water, food. So you do want to you just go to bed early. There's no pills. Some will use caffeine if you absolutely need to, be it studying and things like that. Those stimulants, sugar is a stimulant as well. I used to use that when I went to art school at, they call it OCAD now, but at times I'd be up till 3 in the morning getting some of these, especially in the color course, and I would just sip on some, well, for me it was sipping on some Tia Maria, so you had both the alcohol but lots of sugar in it, and I would just pour that with some cream, some milk, and just kind of sip at that, and that was just, the whole energy needed to be just a little bit, but something to kind of help. But we don't always have to do that, for sure. I've surely stayed up till 1:30 in the morning with not having anything. But just be mindful of energy. With all of these things going on, we just need to take care of ourselves or honor what it is that you need. If you feel you have low energy, rest, because that's when things happen. Things happen when we get run down. And so ideally, rather than thinking about how much vitamin D you need and all of these other supplements, is to monitor your energy and how much rest and proper sleep you need in order to, because that will, next to hydration will be next, but that's really, that's very helpful. One thing can be helpful for your energy is to breathe, just to breathe in and out very slowly. And I do it as a 4 thing. So this way you just, at any point, if it's crazy, in your car, you have a busy day, just in between meetings, take the breath. You do breath in and you just open up the chest, open up the abdomen. You can feel the rib cage come out and bring in a nice deep slow breath. That's how you slow down and get into parasympathetic mode, which means you're not being chased by a lion. And pause. So you breathe in, you pause, and you breathe out nice and slow as you can, if not slower, and then pause. And that will calm the system down so you won't be using up as much energy. Of course, there's plenty. Hi, Ferdinand. There's plenty of things I could say about energies, but the way you use it up is going to be unique to you as versus somebody else. So that's what I really want to do. Well, there's the puppy barking. Sounds like a puppy barking, and he's not probably as commanding. Okay, Teddy. And what Teddy's doing is he's barking at the older dog because he wants him to get his lazy bones up. Okay, Teddy, no more barking. It might not work. Anyway, so let's carry on and go into what's in the news. Now, one of the things that keeps kind of filtering in information in here and there and from this and that is the whole catching it and the shedding, things like that. So I've been kind of explaining to people when you have to think about certain things, catching it is when people have, let's say, chicken pox is a very simple example. It's not harmful or anything, and they used to have chicken pox parties so the children would get them earlier, get all over with. If somebody had a chicken pox one child, then everybody goes over and they kind of all get them immune at the same time. And they're catching it because they're playing and touching the same things and in close proximity to each other, and that's almost a form of shedding, if you want to think it, catching it. The other thing that kind of comes to mind is that when people do get certain vaccines, and I'll call it vaccines, not the injections, like measles, they have actually given it, because think of it this way, people who get the shots may actually in some way be having to build up the antibodies. The body is got something in there to build up the antibodies, so it can be, people who are around them, I have heard this, they can actually catch it. That's kind of another example. Another way that people would catch it would actually be that they actually get it, like polio in Africa. There was the articles that came out to say the only polio that's left in Africa is due to the vaccines. So you're giving something to them, and they actually get it, maybe full-blown symptoms. Or some symptoms that way. In this case, the body is producing something that we don't want anyway in the injection, right? So what's happening is they're trying to have our cells, or a number of cells, produce the very part of the virus, the spike protein, and this will be circulating in the body, and no different than the other 3 scenarios I mentioned. They could actually still shed it, they still be able to give it to somebody. If you're producing that might come in contact with them, whatever that particular protein sequence is going to do. Now, I will say, I just heard from my good friend Susan, a very good friend of her's daughter, who got the injection, and after she got the injection, she hasn't had any ovulation. She just hasn't for, now I'm just going to say 3 months. So 3 months, young girl, when I mean young, 30s or maybe 20s, but here, some person was, I think her husband was in residence, medical doctor, and they ended up getting them because, of course, he was hearing a lot of information, and depending on what information you hear, depending on what side you're kind of taking and where you choose to believe, it can be pretty compelling on either side. So that's that particular situation. Very real. Like I said, I was going to be giving real information. I really think it's a good idea to think about real information. So I wanted to talk about catching it in a very real sense and all these other things. And can you catch a cold? Well, if you are vulnerable, no different than vulnerable people, if you have certain particular things that are kind of in your body. Maybe they don't even cause you havoc, so you can spread them without getting sick because you're a carrier, as they call it. And perhaps that means, but if somebody's vulnerable, so the key thing really in a lot of ways, just to kind of really wrap up this piece, is to be as healthy, to take care of your health, to get the rest, the eating properly, the enough activity, movement, which gets circulation, your lymphatic flow. So the whole movement from energy to blood, the lymph, all the toxins out of the body. That is the key piece, is you want to move along the toxins, whether that's internal toxins or external toxins. There's both exist because the internal toxins are your own waste products from producing energy. So we're kind of getting to that theme about energy. Everything is energy. Your thoughts are energy. And that's why it's important always, I think, to be reminded, or for me even to repeat, that being in the positive or peace with what's going on, sure aware, sure, your thoughts and things are bringing you to maybe further look at or understand or hear or be open and accepting, all of those things. But the idea is, because everything is all energy, the thoughts have their own energy, and if they're on the side of love, let's just say simple, it's like a very, very high vibration, which then almost is like an impenetrable force field vibration, that things won't happen the same way, as in, people who will say, well, I never get sick, that kind of thing. But I want to go straight in to what doctors are saying. Now, I'm going to describe, as I like to say, stories, so you kind of have an understanding here, is one of my neighbor's clients, and I was reaching out to people to say, how you doing? I haven't really met with them in a while, haven't had to, which is great, and just finding where they are. Anyway, she's very aware of things going on, although she runs a company, and she's very mindful of what she has needs to do as an employer and where the employees are, and that's just the take of it. So she said, have you read this or seen this? And it's called medscape.com. I'm going to post the link down below. Around sites, it's public, it's COVID-19 vaccine insights, handling vaccine hesitancy among healthcare workers and patients. Now let me just see, I go down here, I'm going to go up a little bit, and then I'm going to come back down to here. Actually, let me just read this first. There's so much here, you gotta kind of go back and forth here, but I'm going to start with this, so that way I won't get lost coming back to it, because if I go up to the top, there's actually going to be, I think there's like several hundred comments, but I've been pouring through them, maybe only went through a few dozen, but find it very interesting. So Dr. J. Howell. So really what they're doing is, not anybody can comment here. You have to be signed in, you have to be kind of, again, medscape.com. So Dr. J. Howell, 12 days ago, just to give you it's been around for a while, vaccine hesitancy is a made-up political term. Not useful. Leave folks alone if they think the vaccines have not proved themselves safe, which is the case, since the poor evaluation process was short-circuited by the emergency use authorizations, and there have only been 6 months of post-distribution surveillance for the earliest approved vaccine. Okay, Teddy. Poor Shadow. Now, the interesting thing is there's a number of mixed comments before, which we're going to go through. I do want to go through a number, and then you're going to go through some. But this way I can, as I say, unpack some of it with some comments in. Dr. Cheryl McMahon, she responds to Dr. J. Howell and says, "Thank you, Dr. Howell, for stating so succinctly what many of us have said in this thread and others about these unproven, incompletely tested vaccines that use novel technology, new novel technology, and about which so little is known given the extraordinarily contracted timeline." Okay, Teddy, from genome sequencing, January 2020 to vaccine trials summer 2020, to EUAs for Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna 12/2020, and for Johnson & Johnson 2021. We have less than a year of data, good or bad, and absolutely no idea of long-term consequences. The relentless, unequivocal promotion of these vaccines as safe and effective as a remedy, she puts in brackets, remedy capitalized, and the denigration of those of us who raise questions and wish to see more data are frightening evidence that medicine has been corrupted by politics, fear, and advertising manipulation. So this is a Dr. Cheryl McMahon. So we're going through doctors here. Now there's something that was sent to, let's keep going down on this train. I haven't read this, so I'm just going to read it out here because I'm finding there are, there's a bit of tension here between what some of them say. Obviously, the Dr. Carol here thought it was a good idea to support what this other person, Dr. Howell, said. So here's Vicky G, PhD. So not a medical doctor. To Dr. Cheryl McMahon, more data and more research means more deaths. Public health emergencies need a quick response. Are millions of deaths worldwide enough of a crisis? And what about all the refrigerator trucks backed up to the EDs in New York? Obviously, none of you were there. But what about India? So she's probably coming back. 3,500 people die in a day, and this is most likely the undercount. And they keep coming with that undercount. And what I find interesting was they come in with that is if they understood sometimes what happens with models, which happens with models, is they will usually it'll be overcounted. Just like Health Canada on their website, read it with my own two eyes, I don't know if it's still there, had said, we increased the death rates by 50% due to a small study in Europe, no link provided, no name provided, seen as we may be missing some. So I find it interesting that people are going to go to that, but it's probably worse than that. And sometimes we find out that they overcounted. CDC, Italy, they weren't even really from COVID. They had with COVID, perhaps, but most people in India would love to have a COVID vaccine. So obviously she's countering Dr. Carol here. And then we have Americans concerned for their health and safety with the vaccine as they guzzle another six-pack with their pizza, perfume, consume pesticides on their food, drink soda, and eat donuts for breakfast. Where are the good doctors with all their concern about health? These blogs must be fake. I agree with others. This site must be infiltrated with people who are not real doctors or medical professions. Doctors and healthcare providers understand microbiology, epidemiology, public health crisis, do no harm, and humanitarian work. Global health emergencies demand immediate attention. That's if you think this is a health emergency. At any rate, emergencies always happened. whether it's injury or accident, infection, heart attacks, whatever. These emergency, now saying it's a global health emergency, they keep putting the global in there, and I'm sure this person would agree. She's not in all places at the same time. So the fact that they put in there like they know, every square meter of this planet actually has been affected is, in my opinion, not validated here, and nor would she know that from experience. Certainly, real doctors or healthcare professionals would not be demanding more research. What? I just can't wait. It's still more down here. Certainly, real doctors, healthcare would not be demanding more research. Are you kidding me? 1 to 2 years and wait and see with vaccines until millions more die. Certainly, real doctors, healthcare would not be demanding research. 1 to 2 years and wait and see with vaccines until millions more die. And maybe she's just bringing that up, as Dr. Carol did. No real educated healthcare professional would advocate these ludicrous ideas that are not based on science. See, it's so easy for this person to say not based on science. Nobody in here is putting links to anything. You know, they're just coming up with top of mind opinions, and this person is taking, as she has, everybody else is commenting, so she's bringing in what they had. So Michael Whitaker actually comments, now not necessarily to anybody, but definitely on this train. Fear should not drive your recommendations. Now, Dr. Carol, she actually pipes in here again, and to Vicky, the PhD, obviously not a medical doctor at all, but claiming there's a lot of people on here that are not medical doctors. I stand by my comment and reiterate what I have posted before. These vaccines are still investigational. We know that. It says that. Health Canada, through the emergency, just authorized, not approved. FDA authorized because of the Emergency Act, not approved. So they were issued by emergency use authorizations to Pfizer, to Moderna, to Johnson & Johnson, and thus they are incompletely tested. We are in third phase human trials. And of course, what do people have to sign off on? Complete zero liability for the people who would be responsible for any injuries. So let's see what else she has to say. Thus, they are incompletely tested, unproven, and lack a solid year's worth of data establishing safety or real efficacy. And they want to give it to children. I know people under 20 that have already had it. And, you know, I ask them, my daughter's friend come in, and I ask, well, how's it going? I said, well, I got my vaccine. And I didn't say anything. So anyway, it is disturbing that medical professionals and the media continually promote these vaccines as the answer, right? There's such a shift, more so today than ever, to actually go back into normal life by these specific vaccines to the pandemic. I don't even think it's a pandemic, and denigrate those who remain skeptical, right? So here, you know, the doctors are, obviously they're not being censored in here, and how many people probably would even have, I've never seen this posted anywhere. So she goes on, and she actually starts to post things here. So let's go on here and read this. So we'll finish reading this train if there's any more time to go on, but let's finish reading that. So it is disturbing that the medical professionals and the media continually promote these vaccines as the answer to the pandemic and denigrate those who remain skeptical, but that skepticism is valid because facts matter. And these facts are stated in the Pfizer FDA fact sheet for recipients and caregivers, an informed consent document updated February 25th, 2021 FDA website. Page 1, and she puts quotes in here. Wonderful. There is no U.S. Food and Drug Administration FDA approved vaccine to prevent COVID-19. Page 3, the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is an unapproved vaccine. Page 3 again, the duration of protection against COVID-19 is currently unknown. Page 6, the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine has not undergone the same type of review as an FDA-approved or cleared product. And Dr. Carroll goes on, likewise for the Moderna and Janssen J&J fact sheets. Since these vaccines are still experimental, everyone receiving them is really a subject in phase 3 clinical trials, so she's done her research. Prevention and transmission were not endpoints of the pre-emergency use authorization trials. So true efficacy remains unknown, as does the duration of any purported protection. Unknown. How long is it going to protect? When do you have to get it? Do you have to get a booster? Does it help against variants? All these things are unknown. And actually there was a couple of other unknowns. I might as well mention them now. What is unknown? Oh, there's a few things. I guess I didn't write it down. No one needs to know. Didn't get the... Yeah. There's a number of unknowns. Anyway. Unknown, unknown, unknown. So let's carry on. Let's see, unknown as does the duration. Right. In fact, the only claim was that the vaccines would lessen the severity of illness in recipients. And that's what was said when I was watching, I think, a doctor, and they were talking really at the end of the day, and this was the positive. This is the vaccine hesitancy, the TDSB, and the doctor was saying, what's important here is that we keep people out of ICUs and dying, and that's the only thing that the vaccine is being really presented as doing. That's it. So this, and for Pfizer Moderna products, this is the first time mRNA technology has ever been used in humans on such a massive scale. Let's agree, massive scale. Although I will comment here, I'm not quite sure how many vaccines are actually given. I'm wondering whether or not the vaccines that are being shipped to places count as given, or is it the actual ones at there that are given, to make it look like we have more vaccines given, but people aren't taking them and they're just sitting there or going old or whatever. But I have a question about that. Long-term effects are completely unknown, yet vaccine manufacturers cannot be sued for any harm because they have been totally shielded of any liability through the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness PrEP Act. She goes on. She goes on. mRNA technology has been studied for over 20 years, but previous attempts to create such novel SARS vaccines after earlier SARS-CoV-1 and MERS outbreaks failed at the level of animal studies because of vaccine-induced antibody-dependent enhancement. So if you don't know what that is, antibody-dependent enhancement. The idea is there's only a certain amount of, I think it was on the show Highwire, and the idea was the antibodies that are present aren't addressing some of the other things, and you get this cytokine storm, the cytokine storm that happens, which caused the test animals to experience more severe illness and often death on re-exposure to wild virus. Comparing these to other widely used vaccines is inappropriate and misleading. The flu vaccine was first developed in 1933, modified in 1942, and then again in 1978. As that virus continually evolves, the vaccine, a traditional one based on inactivated virus or dead virus or viral subunits proteins, changes each year, and yet may only be 50% effective. I've heard much lower numbers than that. It's like a coin toss, she says, in preventing flu infection at any given season. And I've had people get sick from the shots they get. I talk to them, and they'll never get the flu shot again. And so if this is supposed to be inactive viruses, and people are getting very sick for weeks. Still, it has been tested repeatedly, stood the test of time and scientific scrutiny. Likewise for the polio and MMR vaccines, which have been thoroughly tested and importantly prevent the diseases. I could argue against some of that, but hey, let's continue. That cannot be said of these new SARS-CoV-2 vaccines, which don't necessarily prevent infection. No, you can still get COVID. You just might not die from it. That's the way they look at it. Which don't necessarily prevent infection and transmission. So you can give it. In fact, on April 16, 2021, the CDC reported 5,800 cases of breakthrough SARS-CoV infection, with 396 hospitalizations and 74 deaths. This is on April 16th, just that day, and those who had been fully vaccinated. Then there are emerging variants, microbes naturally adapt, mutate, about which there is only speculative vaccine protection. Speculative. Who knows? Maybe. Lots of unknowns, and we're doing a lot of things because of unknowns. And most of the people, as CDC and others will agree, and even in Italy, when the dust settled, I'm just going to throw out the number, 90% didn't die from COVID. They might have died with COVID, according to the test, and maybe symptoms, but you got to understand, most of the symptoms that you come with flu, cold, respiratory are similar symptoms you get when you have other things, because that's our immunity, our inflammatory response to heal and get better. So fever, those kind of things. Normal FDA approval of drugs requires a minimum of 6 years, continually examining safety, capital letters, and efficacy. 1 year of animal or in vitro testing, followed by phase 1 enrollment of a small number of healthy human subjects, 1 to 2 years. Phase 2 enrollment of those with a condition for which the drug is being investigated, 1 to 2 years. Phase 3, increasing enrollment 2 to 3 years. So now you have a larger study. Then FDA review, final approval, 1 to 2 years. The process for vaccines is longer for good reason. Drugs affect a smaller proportion of the population, right? So you have that. Those with condition the drug is meant to cure or manage. But vaccines are given to a larger population and to healthy people. So time spent on safety and efficacy studies is crucial. Plus, history has shown that even after full testing and FDA approval, effects emerge in the larger population that weren't uncovered in trials. That's right, and they stop using it. Effects causing removal from use, like, yes, Resolin, Vioxx, Bextra, Accutane, Meridia, Celdane. There are recent cases. Even the Sabin oral polio vaccine was discontinued stateside in 2000 due to vaccine-induced polio. So these EUAs have completely subverted the process. The viral genome was sequenced on January the 11th, 2020. And my understanding is they didn't have the isolated virus, so not sure how they're working that that in there, because if you haven't isolated it, how are you actually being able to sequence it? Vaccine trials began last summer. The EUH Emergency Act granted as noted above. So we do not have a single year of data, good or bad, yet. We are told these vaccines are unequivocally safe and effective, no questions asked, no questions allowed. But scientific inquiries asking questions repeatedly and then changing answers and or accepted dogma. The few who raise these points are silenced, dismissed as ignorant, anti-vaxxers or worse. But over 30% of the healthcare personnel, many of whom have been frontline caregivers since SARS-CoV-2 was declared a pandemic, refuse vaccination and express eloquent scientific explanations. Coronaviruses are here to stay, linked to humankind's misuse of the environment, disruption of animal habitats, closer interactions among wild animals, domestic food animals, and humans creating zoonoses and pandemics. There are coronavirus strains that cause the common cold, and that's a detoxing mechanism. There's SARS, which from what I understand is a man-made bioweapon, right? And this has been going on since the beginning and for decades. And Fauci was caught lying and saying that they weren't involved, but it's all in the paperwork. They will continue to adapt and evolve. So, thus, with so many unknowns about the viruses, how can there be such certainty about incompletely tested, unproven vaccines? That's right, there's people that follow that. How can anyone say that the benefits of these vaccines, which lack standard and certainly long-term test data, outweigh the risks, especially when the risk of severe illness and death from COVID-19 vary with age and underlying health status? 96% had 2 to 3 comorbidities of the deaths in the US CDC website, and so they were dying anyway. Remember, media reports do not distinguish positive test results from clinical signs, significant cases or deaths due solely to COVID from deaths with COVID, right? Complicating comorbid conditions, especially cardiopulmonary and metabolic, obesity, diabetes, metals. That was that child that was in Brampton. Apparently she was very, very obese, but there was some eating issues. There was, I think they had been home and locked in, the family, except for the father going out. So we have circumstances around some of these things that the mainstream media is just blurting out there. And one last paragraph here that Dr. Carroll wraps up, and oh my gosh, it looks like we have even more here. Let's go with it. The Vaccine Adverse Effects Reporting System, VAERS, has accounts of over 100,000 adverse reactions and over 3,000 deaths. Now we're just talking about US here. I think I've heard more is in Europe, attributed to these vaccines since their release to the general public about almost 5 months ago. Yet such accounts are dismissed as rare and coincidental. And many, that's what I hear. I see rare, and many question VAERS and those who remain cautious, but never the vaccines. They'll question people who get the side effect. They'll question the people, or not even question the people who die from the vaccines, but yet they'll question the deaths, and that's that. This is an unreported and unacknowledged source of reasoned, justifiable hesitancy. This is an unreported and unacknowledged source of reasoned, justifiable hesitancy. The coercion of an investigational product violates informed consent, medical ethics, and the Nuremberg Code. So here's a doctor who's absolutely have done her reading. She has done her reading. In fact, in the UK, remember the senior nurse who was taking care of vaccine policy and that, who knows very well, said they were not telling everybody who got the vaccine. In fact, they weren't even telling the healthcare practitioners all they needed to know. So let's go down. I can't like this because I'm in here. Dr. Eric Schindler writes to Vicky, the PhD, and to Dr. Carroll. Dr. Vicky G, I am a real person, a real physician even, and have been for a number of years. There are real risks with a hurried and incompletely tested technology that the population is being tested with. Keywords there. Tested technology, incompletely tested technology, new, novel, and then also population being tested. So long-term consequences are not known. Risks to most folks for death due to COVID-19 are quite low, although you wouldn't get that from reading the current media presentation. So actual death quite low. This is where the numbers have gotten in. I think it was 3.4 way back in March, and again it was based on a model, and then we find out over time it's just like the flu, and the ones who are at risk are the most vulnerable. Okay, so low. Each person needs to assess their own acceptance of risk. Examine yourself. Rock climbing, racing, motorcycle, skydiving. You are free to choose any or all of those. Drinking alcohol, taking modern pharmaceuticals, which is like the third or fourth reason for, well, I'm going to go through that for dying. Diving, take a bath, or other risks. Lots of other risks others to choose to take. Choose is the operative word. Would I shame someone for not driving? A huge risk, actually, as there is no immunity that we can develop to a high velocity collision. My recommendation is to recognize that each of us has lived different experiences and may not share your fears nor willingness to experiment with such technologies. You are now free to criticize or dehumanize me in whatever way best suits you. We keep going here. Vicky G, the PhD, responds now. To Dr. Eric Schindler, who just commented, and to Dr. Carol. Dr. Schindler, it is unlikely the global, there's that global word again, count of deaths associated with COVID-19 is media driven. Well, then we need to tell her to go to the CDC website and find that number. 96% had 2 to 3 comorbidities. Making choices that affect the safety of others, such as smoking in public or driving under the influence of alcohol, affect the health and safety of others. Having concern for the greater good of our society is far from being humanizing. Historically, humankind doesn't seem to be concerned about the consequences associated with our choices. So really, I mean, there's some part of her that is really fearful of death and very fearful of what COVID-19 has been projected to be. So that's that, but it goes on here. Dr. Marjorie Saratoff, she pipes in to Dr. Carol and to Vicky PhD. Dr. Maman, thank you for your critical thought process. It is something that appears to be lacking in many of the medical community at this time. And then Vicky pipes in again, PhD Vicky, to Marjorie Saratoff, who just responded to Carol McMahon. There might be a reason these medical schools are recommending. There might be a reason, interesting, for recommending this vaccine. Harvard, Duke, Columbia, Baylor, Johns Hopkins, and Stanford. So all she's going on is the people who have cash in the money, cash in hand for doing research from the pharmaceutical companies. I don't think these well-known medical schools are making money off the recommendation for the vaccine. I don't think, okay, so she doesn't know, and she seems there might be a reason why these medical schools are being cheeky. I don't think, making money off, she doesn't know. It just might have something to do with global perspective, history, education, and research. So, some fun words out there. It just might. So anyway, Dr. Carol McMahon, it keeps going here. I got the COVID vaccine and for one reason only. I want to be alive to experience its horrible side effects, if any. I want to be alive. Okay, I guess to get COVID, I'm thinking. So that's a little, not even talking about the science here. Okay, so she pipes in, Dr. Vanny White, and Dr. Carol McMahon pipes in, Dr. Vanny White. That's fine. Your body, your choice. My point remains that there are valid scientific reasons why many of us make a different choice. And given the facts I stated above, we should not be disparaged for our choice. And by the way, as of April the 26th, 2021, per the CDC, the number of breakthrough infections in those fully vaccinated was up to 9,245, with 835 hospitalizations and 132 deaths. And VAERS reports as of May 7th have also increased with over 150,000 accounts of adverse reactions. See, we're talking about those who have COVID here, have increased with over 150,000 accounts of adverse reactions, 16,000 of them serious, and nearly 4,000 deaths. All of this in 5 months today, since these vaccines were released to the general public. And she finishes here, the science is far from confirmed or definitive, and given my good health, healthy lifestyle, and lengthy experience on an IRB, I'm not sure what IRB means, I choose, in capital, to wait for more data, and certainly more than 5 months for independent review, apart from what the drug companies promote. There you go. So there is a ton of, we were just kind of unpacking that one stream. I didn't know it was going to be that long, but I really liked what Dr. J. Howell mentioned. So it says more comments here. Okay, so just a couple of other ones. They'll be new for me reading them, and then we'll carry on with a few other things I wanted to talk about. Dr. Kenneth Rock, why would you okay, so he says, why would you talk a patient into experimental gene therapy when safe, effective prophylaxis and treatment exists, ivermectin? And then Dr. Marjorie Saratoff says, we cannot discuss those medicines that may interfere with the optimization of profits. So here's doctors coming forward and saying the very things we may think they have no idea about, but there's these alliance, the Doctors Alliance. The day that governmental agencies changed the long-standing definition of a pandemic death, empowered the politicization of medicine. Wow, another key comment in there. And I mean, this is going to go on and on. Like I said, I think the last I looked, yeah, there are so many comments. I so want to read every one of them. But let me go to the top here. 200. I thought I saw 700 comments, but in here it's 267 comments. And I'm not sure if they're talking all the comments on the comments. Well, that means it may be doable for me to read all of them. But that's good to know. May the 13th, 267 comments. So you're going to get things on here on both sides, and again, what I'm coming back to with this particular share is it's real information. You can see, you can feel it, you can just by the language they're talking to each other as doctors. So it might be yeah, Fleming. Yes, Fleming thought the site might be of interest. 50 studies. Excellent. And I think Dr. Fleming was actually on the high wire today, my friend said there. So thanks, Sandra. And there's going to be for us to come together here, it is not about ganging up. It is not about taking sides. It is about sharing awareness and being here for each other's support. As you can see from the doctor's comments, that many, if they don't toe the line, if we think about this as being politics and medical in bed with each other, then who are we gonna talk to? And it's not that we have to keep berating or pointing fingers or get angry or any such nature. No, we're being aware, and because of our awareness, and we can, there's a crack to share here, or to get people to question, to make different choices. It's enough to give this education across to people so that they can make a better or an educated decision. So wonderful. I'm going to post that, the medscape.com, that link. So you pour it over, you feel ready to share. There's so many things to pull out there for sure. Then I want to talk about, there is another, this has been going around in this various place, is the new Nuremberg trials, 2021. The idea here is the fact that if you go and actually read it, some of it here is to understand the Nuremberg Code 1947 is permissible medical experiments. If you want to be a part of an experiment, fine, sign it away. But here's the issue. What if they're not telling you everything about this experiment? Which I think they put the fear in so many people, they're actually taking it, one, because they might be getting pressured by family in order to see their grandchildren, right? Two, they're working in a position and they're being pressured, their job is on the line. And so you have these pressures going on, which is totally, totally against, if I'm thinking, no, against, don't want to make it strong language, but really, choice should be the word here. And why would they be pushing them? So this go through British, here, Nuremberg Code 1947. I just wanted to read this one little thing here. Medical experiments. The great weight of the evidence before us to effect that types of medical experiments on human beings, when kept within reasonable, well-defined bounds, conform to the ethics of the medical profession generally. The protagonists of the practice of human experimentation justify their view on the basis that experiments yield results for the good of society that are unprocurable by other methods or means of study. All agree, however, that certain basic principles must be observed in order to satisfy moral, ethical, and legal concepts. So it goes on. The consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be also so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud or deceit or duress or overreaching, which is what we're kind of thinking about the government overreaching by even just mentioning the passport. But I understand today that when it comes to France, they are not buying into the passport, and a number of the states in the US, there's probably others and many others that are going to follow. So just the idea that you keep hearing about it is probably just, they're going to say it. May. They're going to say it. But the new Nuremberg trials, 2021, is what you've been hearing about as well, which is a team of 1,000 lawyers and over 10,000 medical experts, led by Dr. Rainer Fulmich, has begun legal proceedings against the CDC, the WHO, the Davos Group for Crimes Against Humanity. I'm not going to read it there, but they do, what they kind of speak to initially too, as well as that, is how the were used to come up with cases in various parts of the world, therefore using modeling and saying, well, we've got to close down. So all starting off on a very sketchy foot, in my opinion. So what else here? I want to read this here. Okay, I will put links down below. All the links, you can go through that. This is a PubMed. Informed consent disclosure to vaccine trial subjects of risk of COVID-19 vaccines worsening clinical disease. Let me repeat that again. So this is 2021 March, all the fancy numbers there. Informed consent disclosure to vaccine trial subjects of risk of COVID-19 vaccine worsening clinical disease. So let me just read this. It's an abstract. Aims of the study. Patient comprehension is a critical part of meeting medical ethics standards of informed consent in study designs. The aim of the study was to determine if sufficient literature exists to require clinicians to disclose the specific risk that COVID-19 vaccines could worsen disease upon exposure to challenge or circulating virus. So anyway, you can read that, but the idea there is there could be a worsening of disease. Is this the same thing as they were talking about? We have the cytokine storm, where the body is put in a compromised position to respond not so well to certain other things, only to do with the specific spike protein that there is. So conclusions drawn from the study and clinical implications. Let's read this. I haven't read this, but let's read it anyway. This specific and significant COVID-19 risk of ADE, adverse, let's see what ADE is. ADE. Does it say what ADE is? Yeah, antibody-dependent enhancement. There you go. So the specific and COVID-19 of antibody-dependent enhancement should have been and should be prominently and independently disclosed to research subjects currently in vaccine trials. Wow, this is third phase trials, as well as those being recruited for the trials and future patients after vaccine approved, in order to meet the medical ethics standard of patient comprehension for informed consent. I don't think it's on there, but if anybody ever has take a picture of the page that people actually sign, it'd be interesting to get that document to see what it actually says that they're agreeing to and signing off on no liability for their. Now there's a couple other things I want to bring up here too as well. I know we're getting on time, but And then we're going to get into, yeah, okay, so here is a particular comment here. Sometimes I wish I could highlight the emails and this kind of bring it all in, but I try to make it not too onerous doing the live at 5s. Okay, so here's a little story here. Morning consult recent return to normal poll returns some interesting results. So this is return to normal, and this is the US. Vaccinated are considerably less likely to feel comfortable doing basic human things than the unvaccinated. Okay, to be sure, the vaccinated are already a self-selected group of risk adverse people, but it's still a ridiculous result. Why do they get the vaccine if they didn't think they were going to be safe to go to the movies, for heaven's sake? This is Tom Woods here. And this is a professor. So on a related note, professor, this is the results. Don Boudreau of George Mason University on his Coffee Hayek blog shares this email from a reader. Experience of one of my daughters with her longtime friend this weekend, which is very disturbing. We own a second house in Aiken, South Carolina, and this daughter is an equestrian. South Carolina is now fully open, and Aiken lifted all mask mandates just this past week, thank God. With college classes over, my daughter and her longtime friend made a weekend trip there. Sounds like fun, right? My daughter made dinner reservations, and another friend invited them to see a live music outside. It is important to note that my daughter's has one shot of the vaccine, and that her long-term friend here not only had COVID, but is fully vaccinated, and the friend they are meeting had COVID as well, and they're all under 25, so already not at great risk. They are about to enter a restaurant when the long-term friend has a panic attack, starts crying, and declares she cannot enter a restaurant because people are dining inside. The long-term friend then declares that she also cannot go to the music event because there will be crowds there. Long-term friend has become so terrified of other human beings that despite being immunized, she cannot fathom living life normally. Long-term friend is convinced that all non-masking wearing people are going to infect her, and despite the fact that she, her parents, and her grandparents are all vaccinated, she is going to carry the illness to them and kill them. This is mental illness. This is what we've done to our young people. It is heartbreaking. So I can absolutely speak to the number of people that are becoming OCD. So maybe they were, they like tidiness, they like to be clean. And now all of a sudden they're washing their hands for minutes at a time, multiple times, taking showers for 5 times the length. And I'm speaking from listening and experience, and obviously I'm not going to divulge any names or anything here, but so my client, if a towel touched, a certain place or touched a certain, let's say fell to a full floor, oh, got to get a new towel. I think I'm kind of not exaggerating, right? So this is actually happening. So there's, there's more things about that, but we may now be moving in from the, okay, we had all the, everything was kind of working in that light. Now as things kind of open up, we're now going to have this scenario more and more that's going to happen where people are going to have an issue with that. So on a little bit on the lighter side, let me just see what I wanted else to talk about here. We're going to get into the lighter stuff now, except for one more thing I want to say. One more thing. It's not on here. Here's the one more thing I want to say. So I was guided to reach out to the community, Facebook community, so I know they're all close. And because I want to do this whole celebration garden thing, and I am thinking about doing this other project, but the idea is I was reaching out to see if anybody had pots. There's a lot of planting going on in the spring, so a lot of plant pots would come, and they usually recycle them or throw them out. I'm not sure if the black plastic isn't acceptable, so some probably aren't, so it's garbage. And I said in turn, well, if anybody needs fern, because I usually rip out a couple of dozen anyway, and lots of wonderful response. Some people had pots, and wanted to get some ferns, you know, a few here, 5 there. And I've met a lot of people. But the one person that I met, again, I'm going to keep names out of it, but it was interesting to have, I had some amazing conversations. So I know exactly why I was guided to do it. Clearly, it's not that I'm not going to be able to use the pots. Absolutely, I will be. And of course, they appreciate the ferns. So the idea is this. Here's a person who's retired, but she was an educator, and very educated herself as an educator. She was, I think it was the NDP government had hired her to look at or redo the curriculum, the school curriculum. And the one thing she wanted to put in there, you're going to be fascinated by this. The one thing she wanted to put in there was critical thinking. Now we're talking early 90s. So she wanted to put in critical thinking, and they would not allow her to do it. She tried to do that. They would not allow her to use those 2 words. So early 90s, educator, thinking, and it seemed like it was the curriculum for the high schools, because then she says, I thought about it. Could I get this worked in? What other words? So she did a section, a philosophy section in family studies was one of the ways she did it. We only spoke briefly. When I say briefly, a half an hour, I had to get back to dig out some ferns for somebody. But for that short span of time, as we're connecting on this, and she's telling me scenarios that are happening with her own children have really not gone out. Like OCD through the roof as far as her, her family and her direct family. I think her son's wife and stuff like that. And details on that. So this seems to be something that is just an expansion of initially the fear of the virus, but now it's like a tape playing over and over for people, right? A tape playing over and over to people. So I want to go into, now we're going to completely kind of change it. We're going to go into the lighter things, and we have a number of awareness, and the awareness here is that many doctors are seeing this for what it is, and applying critical thinking. You can see kind of the theme there. I wanted to read a couple of things here. All right, so this is this is a long time ago. This happened August the 18th, 2001. I really like Esther Hicks and Abraham. The majority of your population in your nation of democracy is experiencing every bit as much bondage as the majority in the other forms of government. Because bondage is not about the form of government, it is about the individual attachment to the vibration that disallows the well-being from flowing. So to flow, but I really like the other one too. So here's another one. I really like this one. When you wake up in the morning, the cells of your body have pushed the reset button. Now, I really want to kind of bring this up because I think this is a lovely way to start the morning. I'm going to expand on it, but this is from Esther Hicks as well, Abraham and Jerry, January the 11th, 2014. When you wake up in the morning, the cells of your body have pushed the reset button. You sleep, recharge, and if you don't reintroduce negative beliefs that you have about your body or about your ability, as soon as you wake up, then you have a fresh start. So I wanted to definitely bring that in a sense of this is how we can look at it. I mean, it's almost a daily practice. It can be a practice as in, let's just say something occurred in the day. And how you can kind of do is kind of reset it for yourself, is to pause, take a few deep breaths. For some, it might be going into a different space, get out of the space, and maybe it's to go outside into the forest. Nice, very nice that way. But to do it quite quickly and simply would be just to go someplace where it's quiet, where you're quiet. You can even walk through the door. You can even take a shower and let it wash off you, time permitting, depending what the circumstances are within the day. But this is really interesting to kind of think about very gently, very nicely. You don't have to think about what the reset means or anything. Just say it's a new reset, it's a new day. And I remember a martial arts teacher once saying it was written somewhere. He told all his students first thing in the morning when they woke up is they would jump out of bed with vim and vigor, put their arms in the air and say, yeah, I'm grateful for this day. Is something like to that effect. And I look forward to every day. I look forward to this day. And for what new things and things. You can think of what you want to say, but it's like a declaration. And it reminds me of this kind of reset button. So I wanted to, and maybe what I'll do is I'll copy that particular thing and put it down below for that one. That's the one I really want to read. And one other thing I wanted kind of to bring up here before we go into the jokes is it's called Purple. And here's Pablo Picasso saying, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. So when I did this program for children called Calling All Artists, thinking, all children are artists, this is a fun thing to do. I was bringing in my art background, but it was bringing kids together, and I didn't mind. Just did it for free, but it's an opportunity to spend time with all the kids and my kids, so their friends as well. So, but what I discovered was the adults were very keen on doing it as well. They were very, very keen on doing it. So I want to read this little story. The author is unknown, and in first grade, I'm just going to call him Dr. Lahr, said my purple teepee wasn't realistic enough, and that purple was no color for a tent, and that purple was a color for people who died, and that my drawing wasn't good enough to hang with the others. I walked back to my seat counting the swish, swish, swishes of my baggy corduroy trousers. With a black crayon, nightfall came to my purple tent in the middle of the afternoon. In second grade, so that was first grade, in second grade, Mr. Barta said, draw anything. He didn't care what. And I left my paper blank. And when he came around to my desk, my heart beat like a tom-tom, while he touched my head with his big hand, and in a soft voice said, the snowfall, how clean and white and beautiful. So a little bit of inspiration. Oh, I think that's so sweet. Well, I always firmly believe that there's an artist inside everyone, and it's only our fear of the way we think creativity is that stops us from even trying. It's almost like the dancing thing as well. But more and more people, I think, are stepping out of that, which would be great and awesome. Stepping out of that. And I'm just seeing if there was anything else I want to speak with. But if anything kind of comes up, that's great. So let's actually talk about the jokes, the puns, and why. So we're going to lighten things up. I've got 5 here that I selected. It's called, the chapter is called Just for Fun. And little things here. So let's go through them. And for those who haven't seen it, so it's a joke poem. It's over 50 years old, this book. Some of them are classics, some of them, probably most of them, we're never ever going to hear or have heard before. So 3 slightly deaf old men met on the street one day. Windy, isn't it? Said one. No Thursday, said the second. So am I, said the third. Let's all go and have a cup of coffee. Anyway, I'll put that up so you can see. So windy, isn't it? Must have thought he said Wednesday. No Thursday, and the other one must have thought he said Thursday. Anyway, Jim, 4 men fell in the water, but only one of them got his hair wet. And Tim says, why? And Jim says, 3 of them were bald. Anyway, we've got to love every part of ourselves. Hair or no hair, whatever it is. Okay, so Irv says, your pants look rather sad today. Merv says, well, what do you mean? Irv says, depressed. Question, What happens when a melancholy microbe shoots himself with penicillin? Answer: he dies in vain. Mr. and Mrs. Bright had just started taking French lessons. "Why are you doing that?" a friend asked. "We just adopted a French baby," Mrs. Bright replied. "And when we want to know what he's saying, and we want to know what he is saying as soon as he learns to talk." Anyway, I thought I would slip that one in. So here and there, we have always a new way of looking at things, choosing a better, a more how can I say, a feeling, a good feeling about what is happening, a good feeling about actually getting when we think about what's kind of happening. Certain things, if you're reading enough into it, have been happening for longer than just this year. And what I can say is, we can look at it in a sense, well, the light is shining on the dark. The light is shining on the dark. And I just appreciate each and every one of us for being aware and being able to support each other, and at the same time caring deeply for other people, whether they think we're caring or not. Everybody's caring. And so we kind of come into it with a constant, this is our growth, to not judge, our growth to mind our own business, our growth to want to uncover the truths and be aware and to evolve and to grow. And at times, if people don't do that with us, we have to accept. It's a great learning to accept what is, continue with our own path, each and every one of us, do our inner work, as some will say, spiritual work, however you want to frame it. But the idea is to feel better and better and better and feel better and look at it in a way, listen, if we want choice, how can we not want others to have choice? And we don't want to be judged for the level of awareness and information and positions and choices we make, so therefore, why should we judge others for what they choose as well? So it's kind of like a back and forth thing that we can have a dialogue with and conversing on, versus wasting our energy, like circling right back to the beginning of Live at 5, where anything that we don't do in that realm, we're trying to control people to do things, we're judging people for the things they do. We may want to, point our finger at them, see, I told you so, and to just dissolve all that, because that would be consuming a lot of energy. It would be taking up a lot of your vital energy. And as you see, the back and forth, the discussions, back and forth discussions, is all for naught in some ways. So some people will not do it at all, and other people are definitely into doing it. And again, it's not for us to judge where people are. It's that live and learn, and sometimes we may do something and learn from doing that, what that feels like and how it kind of came about, and move forward from there. So not to hold ourselves and others in boxes for the way we've done things in the past, and that it's going to be like that every morning. We have a reset the button, it's a new day, as they say, and we can go from there. So thank you for coming to Live at 5. And I know it's a bit of information, but it was fun to go through and read the doctor communication, the thread there. So I will put those links up. It was great to see everybody, but I can't see you. No, it would be great to see you. And maybe one day I will do sort of like a Zoom thing where we can come on. But Sylvain Henry, again, I know earlier on I used to mention, if you want to be well informed, Glorious and Free is the Facebook page. Just message and ask to be put on the email list, because I really prefer to get the emails myself. And there's a bit of updates in there. And just about once upon a time it was 2 or 3 calls in the week. And now it's daily, if not twice. There's prayer every evening. So they have wonderful people coming on, and it's real. It's real. So you can always private message me and give me your email. Say, hey, I want to actually be on social email, and I'm happy to facilitate that as well. But if you go on Glorious and Free, that is managed that way, and there's information there. But you just never know where social media people's pages are going to go these days. I was just, how would I say it? I'll leave you at this. I was just tapped on or slapped on the hand, I'll put it that way, by Meetup.com. Most people are familiar with Meetup.com. I had posted a couple links on there, and I had posted the thing regarding the germ theory versus the terrain theory. So they sent me an email to tell me. I'll just I won't read all of it because it's it's a few paragraphs, but the title is an important warning message about your meetup. That's what it is. And basically it's the trust and safety team at Meetup. We want to ensure that every Meetup group is following our community guidelines. Not that I know them off by heart, but Enforce Your Walk Club was recently brought to our attention. So somebody in the Walk Club said something. It was on a Meetup because I put a Meetup for this Saturday's rally. So this Saturday is a worldwide rally, and I'm going to Toronto. So I thought I would put it on the meetup for those people perhaps that I haven't identified with or haven't even come out on a walk are and wanting to come together on Saturday. And we're going to walk from up here where I live. It's only going to be like a half an hour, 40-minute walk to Queen's Park. But I put a bit of other awareness information in there. So, yeah, it says meetup groups contain content and it's containing medical misinformation. So it's their decision to do what they do. Here nor there, I went and took it out. So I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful evening and enjoy the weekend. It's very lovely here in Toronto. I'm not sure if it's lovely where you are, but in my opinion, whether it's raining, snowing, lots of sunshine, cool. Weather can be something that'll teach us to accept everything. Accept everything. That's why I like weather. I like weather for there's, no complaining. No complaining, but to accept and to practice no complaining. But I'll leave you on that note. It's a little bit of homework anyway there, if you so wish. Ferdinand, yep, thank you. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. Wishing you a wonderful weekend. Everybody, a wonderful weekend. And live at 5 Mondays. Now, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be on location. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be up in the great north in nature, and I will do something. If it's nice enough, I will actually do live at 5 outside. So if all works out and I don't have any technical difficulties, then Monday at 5 will be it, and hopefully I'll see some of you at a rally. But anyway, if you're going to rallies, have fun at your rallies, and more the merrier, and we will touch base again soon. So take care. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.